welcome back to my channel. So for this week's video, we are tackling a DIY dining room table bench. Now I built this bench using framing lumber and it turned out so good and it's so sturdy and I don't know, it's wood, but it's really comfortable to sit on. I'm sitting on it right now, so full test and everything. I drew inspiration from so many different dining room tables all over Pinterest, so the design is not unique. It's very similar to like a Restoration Hardware, Pottery Barn. I kind of drew inspiration out of everything and created this kind of mix of parts for my dining room table bench and table. So if you or someone you know would like to try and build this, I will link all of the instructions that I put together in a link in the description for you to check out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay guys, now we are going to start working on the bench base. So I have all of the measurements and all the plans in the link in the description, as I said before, but for convenience sake and explaining to you how I'm gonna put this together, I cut all the pieces roughly to size. I say roughly because these are custom cut to size. But I wanted to show you basically how it goes together before doing all the detail work. So for these, I just cut a 45-degree angle because that is what will be butting up against this, and then we'll custom cut the other side when that time comes. For this, I originally wanted a 4x4, but I could not find one that wasn't soaking wet or a different kind of wood. So what I ended up doing was taking two 2x4s. So what I'm gonna do is kind of laminate these together, but since I don't want to wait for them to fully laminate, I'm going to glue them together and then drill screws right here to attach them to each other. Now for these pieces, we have to cut 45-degree angles on each of these, but at different points. So I'll explain that when we get to that part, but hopefully this overview helps you from getting really confused. This one will go like this. All right, let's get building this. So starting out, I chose which side of the wood that I wanted to be facing outward, glued it together, and then drilled some screws to hold it together. Now to hide the screws a little bit, I used this countersink drill bit to drill into the wood a little bit so the wood screw would go into the wood and it would make it easier to fill it in afterwards. Next, I started working on the actual base of the bench. I took the smaller of the two and marked in 1 inch on each side. This will be the line that I cut my 45-degree angle from. Now for the bigger piece, I measured in 1/4 of an inch instead of 1 inch on each side. Then I took them to my miter saw and lined up that line with my laser. Made sure my fingers were out of the way and then cut a 45-degree angle. And I did the same thing for the other side. And then for the smaller piece, I did the exact same thing. I lined that laser line with the line that I made earlier and cut a 45-degree angle. And this is what they both look like after cutting that. Okay guys, pause here. This is editing Breaha coming back at you because I realized I did not explain the next part very well. First of all, if you already know how to rip boards down, I will put a timestamp on the screen for you to skip ahead of this, but I just wanted to include how to rip down boards and what that meant before I got into me actually doing it. The majority of wood I'm using in this project are 2x6s and 2x4s. If you know anything about lumber, that's not the actual measurement of the wood. It's always like this is 1.5 when it should be 2 inches. This is a 2x6, so this should be, you know, you would think 6 inches, but it's actually like 5.5, and there's some variation in that. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with how to rip down boards because this is actually extremely optional. You do not have to rip down the boards in order to build this bench. I just did it to make it look more custom and like I used more expensive wood. I will link Shanti Tushik's tutorial on how to rip down boards. It goes far more in depth than I want to in this particular video. But if you guys want a more specific hands-on video on how to rip down boards, I will make that for you all, but I don't think now in this video is the place to do that. Basically, I just wanted to say that ripping down boards gets rid of this rounded edge on both of the sides of the framing lumber, and it makes it a complete 5 inches instead of a 5.5. It's easier to work with this if it's in whole numbers. Not only does it make it look more expensive, but it makes it easier to work with. That's why I've ripped these boards down. It is optional. You do not have to do this, but I wanted to explain what I was doing because I did not while I was doing it. So I ripped down the boards to get rid of the curved edges. And now let's get back to the video. I wanted a curved look to this, so I took my sander and I just rounded off the edges of that 45-degree angle on both those two bottom pieces. And after a lot of dust and time later, this is what they look like. So now comes the point of attaching the base all together. So what I did is I marked the center line of the post piece and then the piece directly under it, just so I could make sure I was gonna attach it directly on center. So to attach it all together, I used wood glue. I made sure it was all centered upside down, and then I screwed in screws through the top, which is actually the bottom. Now to attach the bottom piece, I attached it with wood glue, centered it up, and attached them with 2.5-inch long screws. So for the angle pieces, I went ahead and I lined up that 45-degree angle with the edge of the wood there. So this is very tiny and your fingers are so close to the blade that I use this trick of using 2 pieces of wood that are exactly the same width and holding down the piece while you cut it, just so your fingers are out of the way. Now to attach the angle pieces, I just used wood glue and my brad nailer. Now for this bench, I wanted to attach feet, so I just used wood glue and my brad nailer to attach little feet. These are 1x4s that I cut to 5 inches long. So now we're going to work on the cross pieces to attach these 2 leg bases together. So I am marking out my pocket hole line. If you want more information on how to make pocket holes, I will link the video that I made that explains how to use them. I marked 1 inch in on each side so I could know where to line up these long brace pieces. And then I just attached them with wood glue and Kreg screws. Okay, so now I'm to the point where I'm going to attach this leg to the base that I made earlier. I've already attached that leg. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put wood glue on top of here, flip this over and put it on there, and then position it. And once I get it in position, I will screw down 2 or 3 screws in here through the top. You'll see what I mean when I do it. Okay, so I am attaching the bottom brace. So this is the top of the bench and this is the bottom. So what I did here is I used this clamp to help me position this exactly where it needs to go, because it's going across. It's kind of hard to hold it in midair and screw it in at the same time. So I used a spacing block that's the same thickness as this, and I clamped it down so it's level and easier to screw in. So now that the bench base is done, I'm going to go ahead and work on putting the bench top together. So the bench top is made out of 2x4s and 2x8s. So what I'm doing here is I'm ripping down the sides to make it square and look more premium. And then after I ripped down all of the boards, I started drilling in pocket holes to attach all of the 2x4s together. Now on the plans, I have listed all of the pocket hole placements that I used. So if you're curious about that, go ahead and check out the plans to figure that out. So here I was having some difficulty attaching the breadboard, the 2x8, to the rest of it and have it line up perfectly. So what I ended up doing was taking it apart here and setting it up on my sawhorses, and then using this clamp to clamp down one side and make it flush on that side, and then drill in the screw on that side. And then once that was drilled, I would just kind of wiggle the other side till it was flush with the next board and kind of move down the line there. This sounds crazy, but it actually works and fixes the warping that happens just because you're using framing lumber. But even so, when you use framing lumber, it's going to have some warping, so it's not completely flush here, but that's okay. I'm going to just take my sander and kind of force it to be flush. So now it's time to attach the bench base to the top. And what I did is I just used the 2.5-inch long screws and attached it up through the bottom. After screwing the top on, I realized that I didn't put the other X piece on this side. So I'm gonna show you how I do that. Okay, so I measure how far out this comes, and it's 3 inches, 3¼ inches. So what I do is I measure out 3¼ inches right here. I'm gonna do that off camera. So basically, once I get that line marked out, I line the 45-degree angle there with it, and then draw a line against the post. And that's my cut line. And then I just attach it the same way that I attach the other ones, with wood glue and bread nails. So now comes the fun part of staining. So for this project, I used pre-stain for the first time. I didn't film it because it's pretty self-explanatory. You just follow the directions on the can, but it does help. For the actual stain, I used my favorite mix of 50% weathered oak and 50% provincial. I lost my can of weathered oak, so I couldn't show you that. After I stained it with my favorite mixture, I used this whitewash pickling wood stain over top of it. And this gives it a nice coastal feel to it. So basically how I applied it was I did a thin layer all around it, just covering it, and then I immediately wiped it off. Now after the stain had dried, I sealed it all with water-based polyurethane in matte from Varathane. And this is what it looks like all finished. So much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it inspires you to tackle a project yourself. It is so rewarding to get a project done and be able to like use it in the house, and it was custom designed to go in this house, and I'm in love with it. All of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into this bench are fully worth it, and I am so excited that it's done and we get to use it in our house. But as always, I hope these videos inspire you to tackle a project of your own, even if it's not this one. I just want you to feel like you can do it and you can try. I just want you to feel like you are allowed to try and you're allowed to accomplish so much, and just gain a little bit of confidence in yourself that you are capable of doing anything that you set your mind to. But with all that said, I hope you guys all have amazing weeks, and I will see you in the next video, as always. Bye guys! Hey guys, welcome to this week's edition of Breaha Has No Idea Where to Film because every part of her house is a disaster. This is probably as good as we're gonna get.